as the Dean of the Business School in 2003. And then I went to Nepal for 2 semesters as a Fulbright professor, then again as a Fulbright consultant to another university. And then I was a visiting professor in Bahrain for 4 years. Initially I went there to study Islam for 1 semester, but 1 semester became 1 year, ultimately 4 years. And then the situation in Nepal, Bahrain, became a little politically unstable and unsafe. So I returned to US in 2011. I still maintain a campus office, University of South Carolina, Aiken. And to give you the background, because I want to talk about my book, which was published last year, and the title of the book is Harmony and Unity Through Spirituality. What motivated me to write this book was, just before my retirement in 2003 July, I was attending a conference in Perth, Australia, Western Australia, which was attended by all the deans of the business school. And I asked for 10 minutes to address the general session when everybody is there. And if you don't mind, I will sit down because I am a little bit under weather. So if it is okay with you, I'll just sit down and talk. If you have any questions, I would like to keep this informal rather than, just me talking about it. So stop me anytime when you have a question and I'll try to respond. At that conference, which was in 2003, just scandals were going on Wall Street, if you have heard. Probably you were too young at that time, but there was a scandal of Enron and Anderson, which was the accounting and the consulting firm which was involved with Enron, and then many other companies, WorldCom, Tyco, and on and on. And the people who were involved in the scandals, they were all the top executives. The employees didn't even know what they were doing. So when they were caught, Enron went out of business and all their employees lost their jobs. Not only that, but they misguided their employees, saying that our stock will double in next 5 years. So in addition to their 401k, which is a kind of a pension fund, which the employees were investing in it, whatever savings they had, they started investing in their own stocks, company stocks. And when company went bankrupt, they lost everything. And it was not, they became the innocent victims of the misbehavior of the corporate executives. And it hurt me because when I started talking 10 minutes during that conference, I said that my first observation is that all these people involved in the scandals, they had one thing in common. And that common thing, that they all had MBA degree from some of the best universities in the country. Ken Lay, who was the chairman of the board of Enron, and Jeffrey Scaling, who was the president of the company, they both had MBA from Harvard. And I don't know here, but most of the academic colleagues, they were all the deans of the business school. They, before I finished this few sentences, they said, "What's your point?" I said, "My point is that all of us sitting here in this room, all the deans of the business school, we are to some extent responsible for their behavior. Oh, we have courses in ethics and I says, whatever it is, we have to take a hard look at our curriculum because of their behavior. We may have courses in ethics, but it's not working. So what do you suggest?" And I said that the ethics, the definition of ethics is very elusive. If you pick up 10 books of philosophy and look at the definition of ethics, it varies. Ethics is not firmly grounded because it varies from one culture to another culture. Also, it varies from one time period to another time period. And I use this example when I'm in India, especially, you know, if you don't have a firm definition of ethics, and if it varies from one time period to another time period, one culture to another time, another culture, how can you teach that in a globalized world? Because we need something which is anchored firmly. And the problem with ethics is that the example I use when I'm talking in India is that whatever is acceptable to the society is ethical. Are you making notes or sending some messages? No, go ahead if you. But it distracts me, you know. And so, a very simple way of defining ethics is whatever is acceptable to the society is ethical. And the example is, if you go 500-600 years back, आपने सबने हिंदी तो समझते हैं ना आप? So I will sprinkle my talk with little bit of Hindi. संत तुलसीदास जी का नाम सुना होगा आपने? He wrote रामचरितमानस. उसमें एक चौपाई है, अगर आपने सुना होगा तो. And that चौपाई says that ढोल पशु और नारी सब ताड़न के अधिकारी. सुना है आपने वो? Now, at that time, maybe it was acceptable in the society to beat up the women. Some years back, I think there was some demonstrations. Female students said that ye chopai nikalo, Ramcharitmanas se. But the point is, you know, that he being a sant, a person is the child of his or her parents, but also a child of its time. And you know, so it varies from one time period to another time period. It varies from one culture to another culture. When I was in Middle East, in Bahrain, the bribery was very common there, as we have in India. And I asked them why, and they see, we as human beings are very skillful in justifying wrongs. So one of the Arab executives, he told me that we have to bribe people here because what they say is that when you go to a restaurant and you are served good food, good service, and you get a check or the bill, you add tip, right, at the end. He says the only difference is we ask for the tip up front and then give you the service. See, they are justifying it. That if you give us a tip or a bribe up front, you will get a good service. We are a custom officer, and if you tip us nicely, your goods will be released, you know, in 24 hours. If you don't, they can find some excuses, you know. As they say in US, you know, you have to dot every I and cross every T. माल पड़ा रहेगा उधर 2 महीने तक, and your investment will be tied up and you will make some losses. So best way is you tip us upfront. But see, these are the issues of ethics. So what I'm saying is that ethics and the government regulations, you may frame the code of ethics beautifully, hang in the boardrooms of the corporations, hang it in the lobbies, in the reception room, but they are not very effective, as the time has shown over and over. While I was writing this book in 2007, this happened again. And this time, all the executives of the financial institutions were involved. How many of you are finance students? Any? Taking finance courses? First year, okay. They came up with the terms which very few people understood. Subprime mortgages, derivatives, hedge funds, swaps. And it was very difficult to assess the amount of risk the financial institutions were taking. They knew it, but the ordinary public, it was very difficult. Ultimately, what happened was they suffered heavy losses, and banks were about to go bankrupt. The government, I'm talking about the US, the government could not allow the banks to go bankrupt because it will further harm the economy, so they were bailed out. And they knew it too. And again, you know, it was same MBA business students. So what motivated me was that these are external influences which are not very effective. So we have to come up with some internal influences. And I did some research, and the experts had written many papers that internal influence is the spirituality. So if you teach spirituality to our students, and if they understand spirituality and behave as a spiritual person, then the chances are that even when nobody is watching, their behavior will be positive. And in long term, and I'm urging all of you, you know, that this is very important lesson for all of you. It's very tempting to do something wrong and gain short-term benefits, but long-term, it's not worth it. It hurts the society, it hurts the innocent people, and ultimately it hurts you also. Because if you are caught, you lose the peace for the rest of your life. So that was the motivation I'm talking about. I may not follow. So this the corporate scandals of 1990s motivated me to write this book. And as I said, you know, the external versus the internal influences, and the goal of this book is to create awareness about the spirituality among the leaders from all walks of life, business owners, managers, employees, faculty and students, and society in general. And this is a book mainly written for the Western audience, and it is research based, so more for academics, but I'm going to give a copy of my book to your faculty members, and also leave a couple of copies in your library, so that when you find time you can read it. At least read the first 4 or 5 pages of the foreword, which summarizes the contents of the book. So first thing I did was, because at that conference they asked me, how will you define spirituality? And I said, let me do the research and I will come up with the definition. So another problem during that conference was when I said we should introduce spirituality as a course. In the Western world, the word spirituality and God is synonymous. So they said we cannot bring God in classroom. And I said, spirituality is not God. He says, define spirituality. And I said, I'll do the research and come up with the definition. So to understand the difference between religion and God and religion and spirituality, I basically, you know, studied all the religions of the world, starting from the ancient religions which are not practiced today, which is Egypt, Greece, Rome, and then the major religions which are practiced today. I divided them into 4 or 5 different groups. The second group I called is the Semitic religions, which is the religions from the Middle East, which is the Judaism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, and Islam. And under Islam,
why haven't you considered Hinduism? Why haven't you considered Hinduism here?
yeah, I'm coming. Yeah, there are 5 groups. So this is the second group I'm talking about. And under Islam, you must have heard about the Baha'i. Have you heard about Baha'i? In Delhi, there is a Lotus Temple, which is, you know, it's a branch of Islam. And of course, the Sufism, which is the famous poet of Sufi is Rumi. His tomb is in Turkey. So the third group is the religions of the Indian subcontinent. And these are the four, as you know, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. And then the Eastern religions, Shinto, Taoism, and Confucianism. And the tribal religions, I'm not trying to degrade. Tribal religions means I cannot put it in any one category. So the tribal religions of Africa, North and South America, Aboriginals and Maoris, Aboriginals from Australia and Maoris from New Zealand. In our own country we have Adivasis, right? Those are the tribal. Now one thing I found was that among all religions, although they were not in communications with one another many, many thousands of years ago, one thing all religions believe is that the body and the spirit or the soul are different. When soul leaves the body, death occurs. This is common. So the study of spirit or the Atma, whatever you want to call it, is spirituality. And that is the inside. And that's how my research started, studying spirituality. And spirit or the soul is the guiding force of our life. I visited major religious places in the world, interviewed religious leaders and other prominent individuals, and asked, when you do the research in the academia, you have to word the questions the same way and ask these questions exactly in the same manner so that it's not biased. And I had several questions, but the three important questions were this: what is your definitions of spirituality, which I was trying to understand. And the second and third questions were interesting. Is it necessary for a spiritual person to be a religious person? And is it necessary that a spiritual person always believe in the existence of God? What do you think were the answers for question 2 and 3? It was not exactly no, but not necessarily, which is basically same thing. And let me give you some examples. I like the definition of Morari Bapu ka naam suna hai aapne sabne? Morari Bapu. I interviewed him and I asked him, if you can define spirituality. Spirituality ka Hindi kya hai?
Dharam is religion.
Adhyatmikta, ठीक है? No, you guys are in the Auro. So Morari Bapu said that three things. If the person always sticks to the truth, if the person practices compassion, you all understand what compassion is? No? Yes? Okay. And love. So three things: compassion, love, truth. If you read Dalai Lama, he adds one more: responsibility. And if you practice this without any wavering, no exception, then you are a spiritual person. But if that is the case, then my question was, does the spiritual person has to be a religious person? And again, as I said, not necessarily. And again, one example will make you clear. You have all heard of Bin Laden? Bin Laden, who was killed? Bin Laden. He declared himself to be a highly religious person, right? Very religious person, according to him. But can we call him spiritual? No. Buddhism. I don't know you have studied Buddhism or not, but Buddhism, if you read the teachings and preachings of Buddha, he does not discuss God or religion. So somebody came and asked him, because he was creating a new track, and that happens with all the different religions. Somebody came and says, how come you are preaching all over, but don't talk about God. Do you believe in God? So Buddha asked the person who was asking this question a counter question, do you believe in God? He says, yeah, of course I believe in God. So Buddha responded that I also believe in God. तो वो चला गया. एक दो महीने के बाद दूसरा आदमी आ गया. He asked same questions, you don't discuss in your, आप उपदेश जो देते हैं, preachings, you don't talk about God. Do you believe in God? Again, same questions. What about you? I don't believe in God. So Buddha said, I also don't believe in God. तो his disciple, उसका नाम आनंद, वो चला गया. उसके बाद उसको आनंद को पूछता है, अरे भाई ये क्या है बुद्ध भगवान को, कि आपको एक को बोलते हैं I believe in God, other person say I don't believe in God. What is going on? So he says, look Anand, our focus, mainly my preaching, is on how to relieve humanity from suffering. And existence of God is besides the point. It's immaterial. And the reason he says I am saying that is that when you talk about God, it is very difficult logically or scientifically to prove the existence of God, right? It's a matter of belief. So if the person says he believes in God, you say, yeah, I also believe in God, baat khatam ho gaya. If he says, I don't believe in God, why argue with him, and because you cannot prove to that person that God exists. It's a matter of, so there is a very thin line between the logic and faith, and don't cross that, because you will waste your time debating unnecessarily. But Murari Bapu went further and said, and most of the religious people, that those who are spiritual are most likely to be religious people, and most likely believe in God. The only difference between spirituality and God is, in spirituality you are free to believe in what you believe, but the main focus is on practice. In religion, you have to follow the written doctrines. It becomes little dogmatic that you have to do, and rituals also. So some people don't like that. Some people like freedom from religion, and those are the spiritual people. And I'm not trying to tell you what to do about it, but at least practice the spiritual elements which I have indicated in my book.